Hello Internet, I'm Elliot the Purple Ardoofus and welcome back to The Drawing of the Three by Stephen King. Today we're covering the story Reshuffle and the first two chapters of The Pusher. I hope you've read up to that point because I do not want to ruin anything for you. Reshuffle has Eddie trying to juggle responsibilities between keeping Odetta and Roland alive because Eddie is realizing that he is the only capable person between the three of them. Roland says, look, we need to find this door and I'm only going to slow you down, so here's what I want you to do. I want you to take Odetta and I want you both to look for the door because I am too sick to move. Once you find the door, leave Odetta there, bring back the wheelchair, get me in the wheelchair and take me to the door. And Eddie says, okay. As Eddie is traveling along, he goes kinda slow with Odetta, and then he quickly runs back to Roland every once in a while to check and make sure that he's okay. And then goes a little bit farther with Odetta, and then quickly runs back to Roland to make sure he's okay, and has to go back and forth. As Odetta and Eddie are walking along, they start to hear the owls, screeches, roars of mountain lions or huge feline creatures, because they might be different since they have lobstrosities. Who knows? And so one of the times when he comes back to Roland, Roland says, fine, take my gun, but do not give it to Odetta. I do not trust that woman with my weapons. And he says, fine. And he goes with Odetta and they're walking along and they see the door in the distance. They take a rest, they make love, because Eddie and Odetta have an instant love connection and it's annoying. I'm trying not to harp on romance too much, but it's annoying. Eventually, Eddie and Odetta get to the door, and they start inspecting it. And Eddie says that he's going to leave Odetta in the shade, so they go around to the shady area, and when they look back, they realize that the door isn't there. And then they go around to the front, and the door is there. They go around to the back, and there's still shade on the back, but the door isn't visible from the back. And the door is there, there, and there, and not there. 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 Yeah. They hear the roars of the mountain lion things again, and against his better judgment, Eddie leaves a gun with Odetta to protect herself with. And he takes the chair back to Roland to grab him and take him to the door. Once Eddie and Roland get back to the door with the chair, they realize that Odetta is gone. There's no blood, there's no track mark. Roland eventually has to convince Eddie that it's no longer Odetta that they are working with. It's Detta, the evil, slinging persona, and she's armed now. Isn't that lovely? Roland tries to tell Eddie that he wants him to go through the door with him, and Eddie says, no way, I ain't doing that. And Roland starts talking softer and trying to get Eddie to come in closer. Closer. Just a little bit closer. Closer, please. And Eddie's like, oh, grandmother, I can see what mighty big teeth you have. And they argue for a while, and eventually Eddie convinces Roland that he's not going to do anything to Roland's body, and he's going to stay vigilant while Detta is out there, and Roland goes to the door. Then we move on to the next chapter, called The Pusher, and the reason it's called The Pusher is because the two words above the door, remember how it was the Lady of the Shadows and the Prisoner? Well, this one is The Pusher, and it's just kind of like, what could that possibly mean? And for some reason I'm thinking drug pusher. I'm wrong. Roland goes in there, and he's instantly inside the head of a man named Jake. And Jake is not a good man. Jake is a very, very bad man, actually. And it turns out that Jake was the man that pushed little boy Jack into the street, which killed little boy Jack and brought little boy Jack into the gunslinger's world in the first book. You remember, the boy that he left just kind of hanging by the rail ties? That little boy Jack. And the body that Roland is in right now is the body of the person pushes that little boy into the street so he dies. And we find out that this man has a murderous hobby called pushing. He likes to push people into dangerous situations. We also find out that this guy dropped a brick on Odetta's head, giving her split personalities. And remember when I said that Odetta had jumped down into the subway station? I was wrong about that. It turns out that this guy pushed Odetta into the subway station in order to get her legs chopped off. See, his whole thing is he likes to push. He likes to push people into traffic. He likes to push things on top of people. It also starts talking about like this group that he either talks with or knows about him, saying that he's like the best that they've ever seen. It's a little confusing. Is this support group? Is this some cult? I don't know. I'm not exactly coherent on that. Roland says, okay, enough of this, I want to go back, and he turns around and he sees Detta climbing into the wheelchair. And he's like, no, I don't want to go back. I want to stay here, and I want to look straight ahead, and I want to make sure that Detta never sees me. So I will just look straight ahead. In the next section, we backtrack a bit. We see Detta in her hiding space with the weapon pointed at Roland as Roland and Eddie are arguing over whether or not Eddie is going to go with him through the door. She watches as Roland goes through the door and she says, okay, now that he's gone through the door, I will wait until Eddie goes to sleep and then I will strike. Eventually, Eddie does go to sleep and Detta goes and gets into the wheelchair. She turns around and she looks through the door and she sees the gunslinger actually holding up a pharmacy, using his guns to get medication when he could have just bought it with the money in the guy's pocket, probably. She sees the gunslinger as a very violent man, so she is terrified of him. And she doesn't like Eddie that much either. So she decides that she is going to tie Eddie up. And she actually gets a noose around him and yanks on it. And he's like... And he's trying to talk to Odetta, and Detta hates that. She's like, don't ever call me that! Okay, fine. Fine. Call you that. And she instructs Eddie to slip his hands into a couple of other knots and slip his feet into a couple of others, successfully hog-tying himself. She kind of pushes him over the edge of this rock and leaves him hanging in such a way that his legs are going to get tired, but he can't quite possibly stand up because he's hog-tied. So he has to stay in like a constant tension position. And he's also hanging just in the right area so that when the tide goes away, the lobstrosities can come out at night and get him. And that is where our section ends today. Because I'm an evil bastard. Okay, I'm done. Since Eddie is left tied up and helpless, I'm wondering, have you ever felt just completely and utterly helpless? The question that I had yesterday is, have you ever been so sick that you had to be dragged away much like Roland did? I sure did. I was in Iraq. I had pneumonia, only I hadn't known it yet, and none of my crew knew it yet either. And I was standing in line waiting for food we had a cafeteria set up, and I was standing in line waiting for food, and the heat was really getting to me. I nearly fell over. I remember kind of taking a knee because my breathing, and I was having trouble breathing, and I was having trouble staying awake, and I remember just kind of going black. The next thing I know, I'm in a hospital. I've got like 4 IVs of water in my arms, severely dehydrated with pneumonia. Yeah. Drink water, kids. It was scary, but I'm alive, I'm here. Do not forget that the next book that I'll be reading is Sacre Blue by Christopher Moore. Go out and grab it by any legal means necessary. Borrow it from a friend, borrow it from the library, buy it at a bookstore, buy it on a Kindle. I don't care what you do as long as it's legal and you read it before I ruin it for you. I've been Elliot the Purple Ear Doofus, reminding you to watch Your Precamordius, and I will see you all in the conclusion of The Drawing of the Three by Stephen King. Toodles!